The Xanthari Council chamber had never been so quiet. 700 representatives from across the galaxy sat in perfect silence, their various forms of breathing creating the only sound in the vast crystalline dome. Ambassador Vexhai of the Aquarian Federation pressed her webbed fingers against the cool surface of her translation device, watching the holographic display that showed the source of their collective terror. The signal had appeared 3 rotations ago, broadcasted from the outer rim of the galaxy. It was unlike anything the civilized species had encountered in their 10,000 years of peaceful cooperation. The mathematical precision spoke of intelligence, but the raw power behind the transmission suggested something far beyond their understanding. Every attempt to decode the message had failed, leaving only one chilling certainty: something was calling out from the darkness between stars. The pattern repeats every 4.7 standard time units, announced Chief Analyst Morphtide, his crystalline body refracting the chamber's soft light into rainbow patterns. Our finest linguists and mathematicians have confirmed the signal contains complex information structures, but the base coding system remains incomprehensible. Elder Quinthera of the Botanical Collective swayed gently, her flower-like head turning toward the display. Perhaps we should consider that this transmission is not meant for us. The power levels required to broadcast across galactic distances suggest a civilization operating on scales we cannot comprehend. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. The galaxy's peaceful species had long ago learned to avoid conflict through careful diplomacy and resource sharing. The idea of encountering a force beyond their collective understanding violated everything they believed about the ordered universe they had created. We must consider all possibilities, interjected War Chief Bracton of the Saurian Defense Corps, his scaled hide gleaming under the chamber lights. This could be a form of psychological warfare, designed to create exactly the fear we are experiencing now. Ambassador Vexhai stood, her aquatic suit allowing her to move gracefully despite the chamber's atmospheric composition. Honored colleagues, we face a decision that will define our civilization's future. Do we attempt contact with this unknown entity, or do we strengthen our defenses and hope it passes us by? The debate that followed lasted for hours. Some argued for immediate military mobilization, others for diplomatic outreach. The mechanical synthesis proposed sending automated probes to investigate the signal's origin, while the energy beings suggested withdrawing all galactic traffic to minimize detection. Throughout the discussion, one fact remained unspoken but understood by all. Their combined fleets, despite numbering in the millions, had been designed for peacekeeping and exploration. None of their weapon systems could generate the kind of power signature they were detecting from the mysterious transmission. As the debate reached its peak, Senior Archivist Yolandra accessed the Council's historical databases. Her ethereal form flickered as she processed vast amounts of information, searching for any precedent that might guide their decision. Esteemed Council members, she announced, her voice carrying the weight of accumulated knowledge. I have discovered references to a species that our ancestors encountered during the early expansion period. The records were largely classified and subsequently lost, but fragments remain. The chamber fell silent again. Any information about unknown species was invaluable, especially given their current situation. The fragmentary records speak of a species designated as Deathworlders, Yolandra continued. They originated from a planet classified as uninhabitable by all standard measures. High gravity, aggressive wildlife, extreme weather patterns, and geological instability. According to the surviving data, these beings thrived in conditions that would kill most of our species within moments. Elder Quinthera's leaves rustled with what could have been fear or curiosity. What became of these Deathworlders? The records are incomplete, but they suggest the species was quarantined in their home system approximately 8,000 years ago. The decision was made by an emergency council session, though the specific reasons have been redacted from all surviving documents. War Chief Bracton leaned forward, his predatory instincts engaged. Quarantined? By what authority? The Council has never authorized such actions against any species. The authority appears to have been a joint decision by all major civilizations of that era, Yolandra replied. What disturbs me most is that the quarantine was not implemented to protect us from them, but rather to protect them from something else entirely. The implications hung heavy in the recycled atmosphere. If their ancestors had encountered beings powerful enough to threaten even the mysterious Deathworlders, what did that say about the current situation? Ambassador Vexhi's aquatic suit hummed as she processed this information. Archivist Yelandra, do these records indicate the current status of this quarantine? The monitoring stations went offline approximately 6,000 years ago. Since then, there has been no official contact or observation of the system. For all practical purposes, we have no knowledge of whether these Deathworlders still exist. Chief Analyst Morphtide's crystalline structure chimed softly as he ran calculations. The timing is concerning. The quarantine monitoring failure occurred during the Mao period our records classify as the Great Silence, when several advanced civilizations simply vanished without explanation. The chamber erupted in concerned whispers and nervous energy discharges. The Great Silence was taught in basic galactic history as a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked technological advancement. The fact that it coincided with the loss of the Deathworlder quarantine created disturbing implications. We need more information, declared Elder Quinthera, her usually calm demeanor showing signs of strain. If these Deathworlders still exist, they might possess knowledge or capabilities that could help us understand the current threat. War Chief Bracton stood, his massive frame casting shadows across nearby representatives. You're suggesting we make contact with a quarantined species about whom we know almost nothing, in hopes they can help us deal with an even more unknown threat? Sometimes, Ambassador Vexhi said quietly, the enemy of our enemy becomes our ally. If our ancestors feared something enough to hide an entire species from it, perhaps that species represents our best hope for survival. The vote, when it finally came, was closer than anyone expected. By a margin of just 37 votes, the Galactic Council authorized a reconnaissance mission to the quarantined system. The irony was not lost on anyone present. In their moment of greatest fear, they were turning to the very beings their ancestors had deemed too dangerous for galactic contact. As the council session ended and representatives began filing out to their respective ships, none of them noticed the faint change in the mysterious signals pattern. Somewhere in the darkness between stars, something had detected their transmissions and was adjusting its approach accordingly. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see what would emerge from the shadows of both the present threat and their own forgotten past. Captain Zara Chen adjusted the artificial gravity controls as her ship, the Terra Nova, dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. The quarantine beacons hung silent in space, their ancient warning signals long since powered down. Behind her, the mixed crew of galactic representatives tried to hide their nervousness as they approached what their species had classified as a forbidden zone for 8 millennia. Sensor readings are unusual, reported Lieutenant Torres from the navigation station. His human features remained calm, but Zara could see the tension in his shoulders. After generations of isolation, they were finally making contact with the galactic community, and the circumstances were far from ideal. The reconnaissance mission had been carefully planned by the Galactic Council, but they had made one critical error in their preparation. They assumed the Deathworlders were either extinct or primitive after millennia of isolation. The reality proved far different when their scanning systems detected massive energy signatures throughout the solar system. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the mission's chief scientist, looked up from her console with wide eyes. Captain, I'm reading artificial structures around every major planetary body. These aren't simple colonies. The power outputs suggest advanced industrial operations on a scale that rivals our entire galactic civilization. Ambassador Vexhi's aquatic suit bubbled nervously as she observed the sensor data. She had volunteered for this mission despite her people's natural fear of high-gravity environments, understanding that first contact would require diplomatic finesse. Perhaps we should announce our presence slowly. These beings may view our arrival as an invasion. Already done, replied Commander Sarah Park from the communications station. I've been broadcasting standard galactic greeting protocols for the past 20 minutes. No response yet, but I'm detecting significant communication traffic throughout the system. They know we're here. The bridge fell silent as a new contact appeared on their screens. The vessel approaching them defied every assumption the galactic species had made about Deathworlder technology. Sleek and powerful, it moved with a grace that spoke of advanced gravitational manipulation systems. Most disturbing of all, its energy signature suggested weapons capabilities that could reduce their ship to atoms. Incoming transmission, announced Commander Park, her voice carefully controlled. They're using our own communication protocols, but with modifications I've never seen before. Put it through, ordered Captain Chen. The voice that emerged from the speakers was distinctly human, but carried an authority that made even the alien crew members straighten unconsciously. Unknown vessel, you are approaching a restricted system. Identify yourselves and state your purpose. Zara exchanged glances with Ambassador Vexhai before responding. This is Captain Zara Chen of the Terra Nova, representing a joint Galactic Council reconnaissance mission. We come seeking dialogue regarding a matter of universal importance. A pause followed, during which their sensors detected multiple additional ships converging on their position. The response when it came carried a hint of dark amusement. Captain Chen, you and your companions are welcome to approach Earth Orbital Station Alpha 7. Be advised that any deviation from the approach vector we're transmitting will be considered hostile action. Also be aware that your arrival has triggered certain protocols that have been dormant for quite some time. Dr. Tanaka's instruments chimed softly as the approach vector data arrived. Captain, the flight path they're providing takes us through what appears to be a massive defensive grid. I'm counting hundreds of weapon platforms, each one capable of destroying our ship several times over. The irony wasn't lost on any of them. The species the galaxy had quarantined for their own protection had become a military power that could challenge their entire civilization. As they followed the designated course toward Earth, the scope of human achievement became increasingly apparent. Orbital habitats ringed the planet in perfect geometric patterns, their surfaces gleaming with the reflected light of an enhanced sun. The moon had been converted into what appeared to be a massive shipyard, with vessels under construction that dwarfed anything in the galactic fleet. Most impressive of all were the ring structures around Jupiter and Saturn, clearly massive energy collection systems feeding power throughout the solar system. How is this possible? Whispered Elder Quinthera, her plant-like form trembling as she observed the displays. Our records indicated they were confined to a single planet with primitive technology. Commander Park looked up from her console with a grim expression. Ambassador, I've been analyzing their communication networks. The level of coordination and information processing suggests they've achieved something close to a collective consciousness, but maintained individual identity. It's beyond anything our cybernetic species have accomplished. As they approached the orbital station, its true size became apparent. The structure could have housed several billion beings, its rotating sections creating artificial gravity that allowed for diverse environmental zones. Docking bay doors large enough to accommodate their entire ship opened to receive them. The docking procedure was flawlessly executed by automated systems that demonstrated precision beyond galactic standards. As the Terra Nova settled into the designated berth, atmospheric readings confirmed that the station could support all their species' environmental needs simultaneously. Welcome to Alpha 7, came the voice over their communication system. A reception committee is waiting in Docking Bay 7. Please note that this station is operating under enhanced security protocols. Due to the nature of your visit, Captain. Chen led the diplomatic party through corridors that seemed designed to impress and intimidate in equal measure. The architecture was unmistakably human, but enhanced by technologies that had clearly been developed in isolation from galactic influence. Gravity generators allowed for smooth transitions between sections, while atmospheric processors maintained perfect environmental conditions. The reception chamber doors opened to reveal 5 humans waiting for them. Their appearance was subtly different from the historical records. Taller, more robust, with an alertness that spoke of genetic optimization. The leader, a woman with steel-gray hair and piercing blue eyes, stepped forward. I am Admiral Elena Vasquez, Director of External Relations. Before we begin formal proceedings, I need to understand exactly why the Galactic Council has chosen to break an 8,000-year quarantine. Ambassador Vexhai activated her translation matrix and moved forward carefully. Admiral Vasquez, we come because our civilization faces a threat we cannot comprehend. 3 days ago, we detected a signal of unprecedented power originating from outside our galaxy. Our archives suggest your people might have knowledge relevant to our situation. Admiral Vasquez exchanged meaningful glances with her companions before responding. Ambassador, the signal you detected is the reason our ancestors accepted quarantine in the first place. We've been monitoring it for millennia, preparing for the day it would finally arrive. The words hit the diplomatic party like a physical blow. Dr. Tanaka spoke for all of them when she whispered, "You knew this was coming." "Not just knew," replied Admiral Vasquez with a grim smile. "We've been preparing to fight it. The question now is whether your civilizations are ready to learn what that preparation has cost us, and what it will cost you." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The mysterious signal wasn't just a threat to be investigated. It was a harbinger of something that had already shaped human civilization for 8,000 years. Outside the station's windows, the vast defensive grid of the Sol system suddenly took on a different meaning. These weren't the achievements of an isolated species. They were the fortifications of a civilization that had been preparing for war since before the galactic peace began. Admiral Vasquez gestured toward a conference chamber. "Come, it's time you learned the real history of the galaxy and why your ancestors were so desperate to hide us from what's coming." The conference chamber aboard Alpha 7 contained holographic displays that made the Galactic Council's technology look primitive by comparison. Admiral Vasquez gestured for the diplomatic party to take seats around a circular table that seemed to adjust automatically to accommodate each species' physical requirements. "What I'm about to show you has been classified for 8 millennia, the Admiral began, her voice carrying the weight of hidden history. "Your ancestors didn't quarantine us to protect the galaxy from humanity. They quarantined us to protect humanity from learning the truth about what was coming." The central holographic display flickered to life, showing a detailed map of the galaxy from 8,000 years past. Dr. Tanaka leaned forward, her scientific curiosity overriding diplomatic protocol. The historical records show 17 major civilizations during that period. Current galactic population indicates only 9 surviving species groups. "Exactly," confirmed Admiral Vasquez. "The great silence that your historians reference wasn't a natural decline. It was systematic extermination carried out by advanced scouts of the Force whose signal you detected 3 days ago." Elder Quinthera's leaves rustled with distress. "You're suggesting that entire civilizations were deliberately destroyed? That contradicts everything we know about galactic development patterns." Commander Sarah Park, who had been quietly analyzing the human technological displays, spoke up with growing understanding. "Admiral, the defensive systems we observed entering this system, they're not recent constructions. Some of those platforms show wear patterns suggesting they've been operational for millennia." Admiral Vasquez nodded approvingly. "Very observant, Commander. When the first scout signals were detected 8,000 years ago, the galactic civilizations faced a choice. They could unite in defense, knowing that their peaceful nature made them poorly suited for warfare, or they could prepare a secret weapon. The holographic display shifted to show the Sol system as it appeared at the time of first contact. Earth was indeed a primitive world by galactic standards, but the reading showed something that made Ambassador Vexhi's aquatic suit bubble with shock. "Impossible," she whispered. "These readings suggest your species was already showing signs of rapid technological adaptation, even at first contact. Your learning curve was exponential compared to our own development patterns. Humans don't just adapt," explained Dr. Marcus Chen, one of Admiral Vasquez's companions. His resemblance to Captain Chen suggested genetic relationships spanning millennia. "We weaponize adaptation. When your ancestors showed us galactic technology, we didn't just learn to use it, we improved it specifically for warfare applications." The display changed again, showing the rapid transformation of human civilization following first contact. Within decades, they had not only mastered galactic technology, but had begun developing hybrid systems that combined human innovation with alien science. Captain Zara Chen felt a chill as she recognized the implications. "You're saying our ancestors deliberately gave you advanced technology, knowing you would turn it into weapons?" "More than that," replied Admiral Vasquez. "They shared their most closely guarded secrets: consciousness transfer technology, matter compilation systems, quantum communication networks. Everything needed to create a civilization capable of standing against an enemy that had already destroyed dozens of advanced species." Dr. Tanaka's hands trembled as she processed the data streaming past her instruments. "The energy requirements for what you've built here should have exhausted several star systems. How are you powering these installations?" Dr. Marcus Chen smiled with what might have been pride or madness. We learned to tap directly into stellar cores without disrupting stellar function. Every star in this system has been converted into a fusion tap, feeding power to our defensive grid. The process was perfected over 6,000 years of continuous warfare against scout forces. The revelation hit the diplomatic party like a physical blow. War Chief Bracton of the Saurian Defense Corps leaned back in his adaptive chair, his predatory instincts overwhelmed by the scope of what he was hearing. Continuous warfare? For 6,000 years? The advanced scouts have been probing this system since shortly after the quarantine was established, confirmed Admiral Vasquez. Small forces testing our capabilities, studying our weaknesses. We've destroyed thousands of their vessels, captured their technology, and learned their tactics. But each victory teaches them as much about us as it teaches us about them. The holographic display shifted to show battle recordings that made even War Chief Bracton's battle-hardened mind recoil. The enemy vessels were unlike anything in galactic records. Organic-looking ships that seemed to shift and adapt during combat, weapons that could rewrite matter at the quantum level, and tactics that suggested a collective intelligence operating across vast distances. Your peaceful civilizations would have been consumed within solar cycles, stated Dr. Chen matter-of-factly. These beings don't seek conquest or resources. They exist solely to eliminate other forms of intelligence. Every species they encounter is studied, catalogued, and then exterminated with methodical precision. Ambassador Vexhai struggled to process the implications through her translator's emotional dampeners. If you've been fighting them successfully for millennia, why didn't you contact us? Why maintain the quarantine? Admiral Vasquez's expression grew grim. Because we're losing. Every engagement costs us resources we can't replace, while they continue to send larger and more sophisticated forces. The signal your people detected 3 days ago? That wasn't a first contact attempt. It was a coordination signal for their main invasion force. The chamber fell silent except for the soft humming of life support systems. Commander Park was the first to find her voice. How long do we have? Based on signal analysis and previous patterns, approximately 90 standard days before the main force arrives at the galaxy's outer rim, replied Dr. Chen. Once they establish a foothold, they'll begin systematic elimination of all inhabited systems. Estimated time for complete galactic sterilization, 18 months. Elder Quinthera's plant-like form drooped with despair. What do you need from us? Our fleets are designed for exploration and peacekeeping. We have no weapons capable of fighting such an enemy. We don't need your weapons, Admiral Vasquez said firmly. We need your people. Every human in this system has been genetically and cybernetically enhanced for warfare. We've sacrificed our original nature to become living weapons, but that sacrifice means we lack something essential for ultimate victory. Dr. Tanaka looked up from her readings with growing comprehension. You've lost genetic diversity. Enhanced for combat but limited in adaptive potential. Precisely. We need the fresh perspective and unpredictable innovation that only unmodified intelligent species can provide. More importantly, we need species capable of surviving if our final gambit fails. The holographic display changed one last time, showing a schematic that made even the station's impressive technology look simple by comparison. Captain Chen recognized it immediately as some form of massive weapon system, but its scale defied comprehension. This is Project Lazarus, explained Admiral Vasquez, a weapon capable of sterilizing an entire galaxy of enemy forces. But its use would also eliminate most existing life, including human civilization. It's truly a last resort. War Chief Bracton stood slowly, his warrior's mind grasping the terrible mathematics of their situation. You're asking us to prepare for the extinction of galactic civilization while simultaneously helping you fight to prevent. Tell us I'm asking you to do what our ancestors couldn't, replied Admiral Vasquez. Unite your civilizations not in peace, but in preparation for the fight of your existence. Because in 90 days the galaxy will face an enemy that has already conquered thousands of others, and we are your only hope of survival. Outside the conference chamber windows, the defensive grid of Sol system continued its eternal watch, a monument to 8,000 years of preparation for a war that was finally about to begin. The galaxy had indeed held its breath, but now it was time to see if the Deathworlders had prepared enough to help it breathe again. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened within hours of the diplomatic mission's initial report. The crystalline chamber that normally hosted Debates about trade routes and cultural exchanges now buzzed with panicked energy as representatives struggled to comprehend the magnitude of the threat facing their civilization. Captain Chen stood before the assembled delegates, her uniform bearing new insignia that marked her as the official liaison between humanity and the galactic community. The weight of 8,000 years of hidden history pressed down on every word she spoke. Honored representatives, what I'm about to share will fundamentally change our understanding of galactic history and our place within it, she began, activating holographic displays that showed the true extent of human military development. The humans have not been idle during their quarantine. They have become something unprecedented in galactic records. The display showed time-lapse recordings of human naval exercises that made the assembled aliens gasp in shock. Ships moved through space with impossible agility. Weapons discharged energies that could crack planets, and coordination systems operated with precision that suggested telepathic communication. Chief Analyst Morphtide's crystalline structure chimed with distress frequencies. Captain Chen, the power outputs we're observing exceed our theoretical maximums for portable fusion systems. How have they achieved such energy density? Dr. Tanaka, who had remained aboard the human station to study their technology, appeared via quantum communication link. Her holographic form flickered slightly as she transmitted from the Sol system. Chief Analyst, they've moved beyond fusion entirely. Their primary warships are powered by controlled antimatter reactions, contained within artificial gravity wells. Each vessel carries enough destructive potential to sterilize a planet. The revelation sent waves of fear through the assembly. Ambassador Vexai's aquatic suit registered stress chemicals as she processed the implications. Dr. Tanaka, are you suggesting that every human vessel is essentially a weapons of mass destruction? Not just suggesting, confirming. But that's not the most disturbing discovery. Their crew members have been genetically modified to survive in hard vacuum for limited periods, resist radiation that would kill most galactic species instantly, and process information at rates that approach artificial intelligence capabilities. Elder Quinthera's leaves turned a pale shade that indicated deep distress. They've transformed themselves into living weapons. What manner of threat could justify such extreme measures? The holographic display shifted to show recordings captured by human reconnaissance drones over the past millennium. The enemy vessels they revealed were unlike anything in galactic databases. Ships that seemed to grow rather than be constructed. Weapons that could adapt their effects in real time, and most disturbing of all, evidence of intelligence that operated on a collective level spanning entire fleets. War Chief Bracton leaned forward. His predatory instincts engaged despite his fear. These enemies, they show no individual variation in design or tactics. Are we facing a hive mind? Admiral Vasquez's voice carried across the quantum link from Alpha 7. Worse than a hive mind, War Chief. Our analysis suggests they're fragments of a single intelligence that was somehow distributed across multiple forms. Each ship contains part of a consciousness that spans entire invasion fleets. Destroying individual vessels doesn't significantly impact their overall capability. The chamber erupted in nervous chatter as representatives tried to process this information. The peaceful species of the galaxy had never encountered anything like collective intelligence on such a scale. Their military strategies, such as they were, focused on negotiation and defensive positioning. Admiral Vasquez called out Representative Zixandra of the Silicon Collective, her mineral-based voice ringing through the chamber's acoustic systems. What specific assistance do you require from our civilizations? Our industrial capacity is significant, but our military experience is limited to peacekeeping operations. We need 3 things immediately, replied the Admiral. First, complete industrial conversion to military production using human-designed specifications. Second, volunteers from each species for genetic and cybernetic enhancement programs. Third, evacuation protocols for non-combatant populations to prepared safe zones. The last requirement sent shockwaves through the assembly. Ambassador Vexai spoke for many when she asked, "Safe zones? Are you anticipating the fall of our primary worlds?" "I'm anticipating the complete sterilization of most inhabited systems," Admiral Vasquez replied with brutal honesty. The enemy's pattern is consistent across every galaxy they've invaded. Initial attacks target industrial centers and military installations. Once resistance is eliminated, they methodically cleanse all life from every world. We estimate that 90% of current galactic population will need to be relocated to survive the coming War? Dr. Tanaka's holographic form gestured toward new displays showing massive construction, projects hidden throughout the galaxy's outer regions. The humans have spent millennia preparing fallback positions, artificial worlds capable of supporting billions of refugees, hidden in systems that appear uninhabitable to enemy reconnaissance. Chief Analyst Morphtide's structure shifted through several color patterns as he processed the logistics. The scale of such an operation defies our current transportation capabilities. Moving billions of beings across galactic distances would require resources we simply don't possess. Which is why we're sharing our shipyard technology, explained Admiral Vasquez. Human transport vessels can be manufactured using automated systems and materials that your species consider waste products. Each ship will be capable of carrying entire populations in emergency stasis. The debate that followed was unlike anything in the Council's history. Representatives struggled with the concept of abandoning their homeworlds, of transforming their peaceful societies into military assets, and most challenging of all, of trusting a species that had been hidden from them for 8 millennia. Elder Quinthera finally voiced the question that haunted them all. Admiral, even with our complete cooperation, what are our chances of survival? The pause that followed stretched uncomfortably long. When Admiral Vasquez finally responded, her voice carried the weight of 8,000 years of preparation and sacrifice. If we implement everything perfectly, evacuate successfully, and fight with coordination we've never achieved before, we estimate a 30% chance of retaining sufficient galactic civilization to eventually rebuild. War Chief Bracton stood slowly, his massive frame casting shadows across the chamber. And if we refuse cooperation? If we attempt to face this threat using our current capabilities? 0%, came the immediate reply. Your fleets would be destroyed within days of the enemy's arrival. Your worlds would be cleansed within months. The galaxy would become another dead zone in a universe already filled with them. The vote, when it finally came, was unanimous. For the first time in galactic history, the peaceful species of their civilization voted to transform themselves into instruments of war. The irony was not lost on anyone present. Their survival depended on becoming more like the very beings they had quarantined for being too dangerous. As the session concluded and representatives began coordinating the largest mobilization effort in galactic history, long-range sensors detected subtle changes in the mysterious signal pattern. Deep in the void between galaxies, something vast and hungry had noticed their preparations and was accelerating its approach. The galaxy had indeed held its breath, but now it was learning to roar. Whether that roar would be loud enough to drown out the silence that had claimed so many other civilizations remained to be seen. In the Sol system, human shipyards began the unprecedented task of equipping an entire galaxy for the fight of its existence, while their enhanced crews prepared to teach peaceful species the brutal mathematics of survival. The countdown had begun, and everyone knew that in 90 days the galaxy would either stand united in defiance or fall divided into extinction. 60 days after the Emergency Council session, the galaxy had transformed beyond recognition. What had once been peaceful trade routes now carried streams of military transports moving entire populations toward hidden sanctuary worlds. Industrial centers that had produced luxury goods for millennia now churned out weapons of unprecedented destructive power, their production lines guided by human technological specifications that pushed galactic manufacturing capabilities to their absolute limits. Commander Sarah Park stood in the observation deck of the newly commissioned vessel Galactic Unity, watching the controlled chaos of the largest evacuation in recorded history. The ship itself represented the impossible made real, a hybrid of human military engineering and galactic industrial capacity, capable of carrying 2 million refugees while maintaining defensive capabilities that rivaled dedicated warships. Status report from Sector 7, announced Lieutenant Torres from the bridge communication station. His enhanced vocal cords, a recent modification that allowed him to process multiple communication frequencies simultaneously, carried subtle stress indicators that the ship's AI immediately flagged for psychological monitoring. Captain Chen, her own modifications now including neural interfaces that let her directly communicate with the ship's tactical systems, nodded as data flowed through her enhanced consciousness. 17 evacuation transports have successfully reached Sanctuary Alpha 7. Population transfer is proceeding ahead of schedule, but we're detecting increased enemy probe activity in the outer systems. The probe activity was the most disturbing development of the past weeks. Human long-range sensors, now integrated with galactic detection networks, had identified dozens of enemy reconnaissance vessels penetrating the galaxy's outer rim. Each probe was met by joint human-alien defense forces, resulting in brief but intense battles that served as terrifying previews of what was to come. Dr. Tanaka materialized as a holographic projection, her image transmitted from the research facility on Sanctuary Prime, where she was overseeing the integration of human and galactic technologies. Her appearance showed the effects of recent cybernetic enhancements, silver threads visible beneath her skin where neural networks had been implanted to allow direct interface with research systems. "Captain, we've completed analysis of the latest probe wreckage," she reported, her enhanced mental processing allowing her to speak while simultaneously reviewing multiple data streams. "The enemy adaptation rate is accelerating. Each probe incorporates countermeasures against tactics that destroyed previous units." Admiral Vasquez's voice joined the communication from her command center aboard Alpha 7, now serving as the coordination hub for galactic defense efforts. "Dr. Tanaka, what's your assessment of their learning curve? Are we facing individual adaptation or collective intelligence evolution?" "Collective evolution, Admiral, but worse than we initially calculated. The probe wreckage contains quantum entanglement communicators that allow instantaneous information transfer across galactic distances. Every engagement we fight teaches the main force exactly how to counter our strategies." The implications sent a chill through the assembled officers. War Chief Bracton, his own modifications now including enhanced reaction time and electromagnetic vision capable of seeing across multiple spectrums, growled with frustrated aggression. "We're training our own executioners with every victory." Elder Quinthera's image flickered into the conference, transmitted from Botanical Sanctuary Delta 9, where her people were adapting to lives far from their homeworld gardens. Her appearance had changed. Dramatically, what had once been delicate plant-like features now showed signs of chemical modifications that allowed her to survive in multiple atmospheric compositions and resist biological warfare. "Agents, perhaps," she suggested, her voice carrying new harmonic frequencies that resulted from vocal modifications. "We should consider allowing some probes to succeed in their reconnaissance. If they believe they understand our capabilities completely, they might underestimate our actual defensive preparations." Ambassador Vexhai, speaking from Aquatic Sanctuary Beta 3, had undergone the most dramatic transformation of all. Her aquatic suit had been replaced with cybernetic gills that allowed her to breathe multiple atmospheric compositions, while neural enhancers let her process complex tactical data in real time. "The deception strategy has merit, but it requires us to sacrifice defensive positions that contain millions of refugees." The debate that followed illustrated how profoundly the peaceful species had changed in just 60 days. Where once they would have sought diplomatic solutions and avoided any action that risked civilian casualties, they now calmly discussed tactical deceptions that would cost lives, but might provide strategic advantages. Chief Analyst Morphtide, his crystalline structure now shot through with metallic threads that enhanced his computational abilities, chimed with calculated frequencies. "Analysis indicates the enemy main force will arrive 17 days ahead of initial projections. Long-range gravitational sensors detect fleet movement suggesting a force size approximately 400% larger than our most pessimistic estimates." The silence that followed was broken only by the soft humming of life, support systems, and the distant sounds of refugees being processed through the ship's integration centers. Captain Chen felt the weight of command pressing down on her enhanced shoulders as she processed the implications. "Admiral Vasquez, are our fallback strategies still viable with those numbers?" The pause before the Admiral's response told them everything they needed to know. "Captain, we're now looking at odds that make our 30% survival estimate appear optimistic. The enemy force approaching our galaxy is larger than any we've encountered in 8,000 years of preparation." Dr. Tanaka's holographic form flickered as she accessed classified databases that even the Galactic Council had never seen. "Admiral, perhaps it's time to consider accelerating Project Lazarus. If conventional resistance is no longer viable, Project Lazarus remains a final option only." Admiral Vasquez cut her off firmly. "The cost of that solution is the sterilization of 90% of galactic space. We would save our people only to destroy everything they've ever known." Commander Park looked up from her tactical displays, her enhanced vision tracking multiple data streams simultaneously. Admiral, what if we're approaching this wrong? The enemy learns from our victories, but what about our defeats? Have we considered tactical failures that might teach them incorrect lessons? The idea sparked immediate interest among the assembled commanders. War Chief Bracton's predatory smile showed teeth that had been replaced with enhanced versions capable of penetrating most known materials. Deliberate defeat strategies. Make them believe they understand our weaknesses while hiding our true capabilities. It's possible, admitted Admiral Vasquez, but it would require sacrificing ships, installations, and lives to maintain the deception. Are we prepared to make those choices? The question hung in the recycled air, as each representative considered the moral implications. They had already sacrificed their peaceful nature, their physical forms, and their homeworlds. The idea of deliberately sacrificing their own forces was perhaps the final step in their transformation, from peaceful explorers to desperate survivors. Elder Quinthara was the first to speak, her modified voice carrying new undertones of resolve. We have already lost everything that made our civilizations what they were. If deliberate sacrifice can preserve some possibility of future rebuilding, then we must consider it. Ambassador Vexahai's agreement came with visible emotional strain, her enhanced features showing the internal conflict between her people's natural compassion and their current desperate circumstances. My people have already voted to authorize any strategy that increases survival probability, regardless of immediate cost. One by one, the representatives of the galaxy's surviving species voted to embrace a strategy that would have been unthinkable just months earlier. They would deliberately lose battles, sacrifice prepared positions, and allow enemy forces to believe they understood galactic capabilities, all while hiding their true defensive preparations. As the conference ended and each representative returned to their desperate preparations, long-range sensors detected the first gravitational distortions, indicating the enemy main forces' approach to the galactic rim. The largest armada in known history was bearing down on them, confident in its ability to add another galaxy to its collection of sterile conquests. But this time, the galaxy would not face extinction passively. Enhanced by human technology, driven by desperate necessity, and guided by 8,000 years of preparation, the peaceful species had learned to become something new. Survivors who would fight with every weapon, strategy, and sacrifice necessary to preserve some fragment of their civilization. The final countdown had begun, and across the galaxy, former pacifists prepared to become warriors in the ultimate test of their transformed nature. The enemy arrived like a plague of metallic locusts, their ships dropping out of hyperspace at the galaxy's rim in numbers that defied comprehension. Admiral Vasquez stood in the command center of Alpha 7, watching real-time tactical displays that showed the scope of the invasion force. Her enhanced mind processed the data with crystalline clarity while her modified nervous system suppressed the fear that would have paralyzed any unenhanced human. Enemy fleet composition analysis complete, reported Dr. Chen, his consciousness now distributed across multiple server cores to handle the computational load required for real-time battle coordination. We're looking at approximately 2 million primary combat vessels, supported by what appears to be unlimited manufacturing capability. The first phase of the Galactic Defense Plan unfolded exactly as designed. Outer Rim defensive stations opened fire with weapons that appeared impressive, but were actually decades behind human military technology. The enemy response was swift and overwhelming, reducing the installations to expanding clouds of superheated plasma within minutes. Captain Chen, commanding the Galactic Unity from a hidden position behind a gas giant's magnetic field, watched the tactical feeds with mixed emotions. The sacrifice stations are performing as expected. Enemy forces are advancing into the secondary, defensive zone with confidence patterns suggesting they believe they understand our capabilities. War Chief Bracton's voice crackled across the quantum communication network from his position commanding the Saurian Defense Fleet. His modifications now included direct neural interfaces with his ship's weapon systems, allowing him to fight with reflexes measured in microseconds. Admiral, the enemy is deploying boarding craft against the abandoned research stations. Should we maintain the deception? Maintain until they complete their analysis, ordered Admiral Vasquez. Those stations contained carefully prepared intelligence designed to reinforce their assumptions about our technological limitations. The deception was working perfectly, but at a cost that made even the enhanced commanders feel sick. Thousands of volunteers had remained at the sacrifice positions, knowing their deaths were necessary to maintain the illusion of weakness. Each life lost was recorded and honored, but the mathematics of survival demanded these sacrifices. Ambassador Vexhai, now commanding Aquatic Fleet 7 from her position in the Nebula Sanctuary, reported incoming intelligence from her deep space reconnaissance units. Admiral, enemy patterns suggest they're concentrating forces for a direct assault on the core worlds. They're ignoring the outer sanctuary positions entirely. As planned, confirmed Admiral Vasquez. Dr. Tanaka, are the core world defensive illusions maintaining stability? Dr. Tanaka's response came from multiple locations simultaneously, as her consciousness was distributed across the galaxy's tactical network. Holographic cities are operating within normal parameters. Enemy reconnaissance will detect population centers, industrial facilities, and defensive installations that appear to represent our primary assets. The core world's defense was perhaps the most elaborate deception in galactic history. Massive holographic generators created the illusion of thriving civilizations on planets that had been evacuated months earlier. Enemy sensors would detect exactly what they expected to find: the peaceful species cowering on their homeworlds, protected by obviously inadequate defenses. Elder Quinthera's tactical division reported from the Botanical Defense Network, her plant-based intelligence now enhanced with quantum processing capabilities that let her coordinate defensive actions across multiple star systems simultaneously. Admiral, preliminary enemy assault groups are beginning bombardment of the false population centers. They're deploying sterilization weapons as expected. The weapons that struck the core worlds would have horrified the galaxy's peaceful species just months earlier. Planetary surfaces were converted to molten glass, atmospheres were stripped away by exotic matter disruptors, and entire ecosystems were reduced to base elements within hours. But the worlds being destroyed were empty shells, their populations safely hidden in distant sanctuaries. Phase 1 deception complete, announced Dr. Chen. Enemy forces are reporting successful elimination of primary population centers. They're beginning to deploy harvesting operations to extract industrial resources. This was the moment of greatest risk. The enemy's harvesting operations would eventually reveal that the destroyed worlds contained nothing of value, potentially exposing the deception. But intelligence gathered from probe wreckage suggested they would focus on rapid resource extraction before moving to the next target galaxy. Commander Park, her enhanced senses monitoring communication intercepts from across the battlefield, detected subtle changes in enemy coordination patterns. Admiral, I'm reading increased communication density between enemy command units. They may be detecting inconsistencies in their intelligence data. Expected timeline acceleration, acknowledged Admiral Vasquez. All units implement Phase 2 immediately. It's time to show them what they're really fighting. The galaxy's hidden defensive network activated simultaneously across 1,000 star systems. Weapons platforms that had remained dark for millennia powered up with energy signatures that dwarfed anything the enemy had previously encountered. Ships that had been hidden in quantum-dimensional pockets emerged into normal space, their hulls gleaming with technologies that combined human innovation with galactic industrial capacity. The transformation was stunning in its scope and coordination. Where the enemy had detected primitive civilizations clinging to inadequate defenses, they now faced a military force that operated with precision and power beyond their previous experience. Human-designed weapon systems opened fire with energies that could crack moons, while alien crews enhanced with human biotechnology fought with reflexes and coordination that approached perfection. Enemy, fleet disposition changing, reported War Chief Bracton as his enhanced senses tracked thousands of simultaneous course corrections across the invasion force. They're attempting to redeploy into defensive formations. But the surprise was complete, and the enhanced galactic forces pressed their advantage with ruthless efficiency. Ships that had seemed primitive revealed themselves as technological marvels, their hulls shifting through dimensional phases that made them nearly impossible to target. Weapons that appeared to be standard energy projectors discharged exotic matter that reacted with enemy hull materials at the quantum level. Captain Chen led the first major counterattack. the galactic unity revealing capabilities that made the enemy's previous intelligence completely worthless. "Target the command Nexus vessels first," she ordered. Her consciousness merged with her ship's tactical systems. Their collective intelligence depends on coordination nodes. The battle that followed redefined the scope of galactic warfare. Enhanced humans fought alongside modified aliens in engagements that spanned entire star systems, their coordination achieving levels that approached telepathic unity. Enemy forces that had expected easy conquest found themselves facing defensive capabilities that exceeded their worst-case projections. Dr. Tanaka, her distributed consciousness monitoring the battle from 1,000 perspectives simultaneously, provided real-time tactical analysis that kept the galactic forces one step ahead of enemy adaptation. "Admiral, enemy learning patterns are accelerating, but our initial advantage is holding. Estimated time before they adapt to our actual capabilities, 6 hours. "More than enough," replied Admiral Vasquez with grim satisfaction. "Phase 3 activation in 30 seconds. All units prepare for temporal displacement operations." The final phase of the defense plan was the most audacious gambit in military history, using technologies that pushed the boundaries of known physics. The galactic forces would attempt to trap the entire enemy invasion in a temporal distortion field, buying precious time for the evacuation operations to reach completion. As the countdown reached 0, the galaxy's hidden weapon network activated in perfect synchronization, warping spacetime itself into a weapon of unprecedented scale. The enemy, caught completely off guard by defensive capabilities they had never encountered, found themselves fighting not just for conquest, but for their very existence. The real battle for the galaxy had finally begun, and for the first time in 8,000 years, humanity and their allies were fighting from a position of strength rather than desperate survival. The temporal distortion field held for exactly 4 hours and 17 minutes before the enemy collective intelligence found a way to break free. When normal spacetime reasserted itself, both sides had been fundamentally changed by the experience. The galactic defenders had gained precious time to complete their evacuation operations, while the enemy had adapted to technologies they had never previously encountered. Admiral Vasquez stood in the ruins of Alpha 7's primary command center, her enhanced body bearing the scars of direct combat against enemy boarding forces that had phased through their dimensional shields. Around her, the surviving command staff coordinated the final phases of galactic evacuation while simultaneously directing the largest military engagement in recorded history. "Sanctuary Worlds report 93% evacuation completion," announced Dr. Tanaka, her consciousness now distributed across quantum communication networks that spanned the galaxy. "But Admiral, the enemy adaptation rate has exceeded all projections. They're countering our defensive systems faster than we can deploy new countermeasures." The tactical displays showed the brutal reality of their situation. The enemy had not only broken free from the temporal trap, but had emerged with enhanced capabilities that incorporated defensive technologies they had encountered during the distortion. Ships that had once been vulnerable to galactic weapons now shrugged off attacks that should have destroyed them. Captain Chen's voice came through the communication network from the bridge of galactic unity, her ship now serving as a mobile command center for refugee convoy protection. "Admiral, we're detecting massive energy buildups in enemy vessels. Analysis suggests they're preparing some form of galaxy-wide sterilization protocol." War Chief Bracton, leading the final defensive action at the galaxy's core, reported with characteristic bluntness, "Admiral, my fleet can hold for perhaps 2 more hours before we're overwhelmed. The enemy is throwing everything they have at our defensive lines." The moment Admiral Vasquez had dreaded for 8,000 years had finally arrived. Conventional resistance was no longer viable. Evacuation operations would not complete in time, and the enemy was preparing to implement the same total sterilization protocol they had used on countless other galaxies. "Dr. Tanaka," she said quietly, her enhanced vocal cords carrying undertones that the ship's AI recognized as authorization codes. "Initialize Project Lazarus. Full galaxy sterilization protocol." The silence that followed was broken only by the distant sounds of battle as enemy forces pressed their final assault. Every enhanced being in the command network understood what Project Lazarus meant: the complete elimination of all biological and technological life within the galaxy, including their own. "Admiral," Elder Quinthera's voice carried across the network from her position coordinating botanical fleet operations. Project Lazarus will destroy everything we've fought to preserve. Is there no alternative? The alternative is allowing the enemy to add our galaxy to their collection, while they continue to exterminate civilizations across the universe, Admiral Vasquez replied. At least with Lazarus we deny them victory, and prevent them from using our resources against other galaxies. Commander Park, her enhanced analytical systems processing millions of tactical variables simultaneously, suddenly interrupted with urgent data. Admiral, wait! I'm detecting anomalous patterns in enemy communication networks. The collective intelligence is showing signs of conflict? Dr. Tanaka immediately diverted processing power to analyze Park's discovery. What she found defied every assumption they had made about their enemy. Admiral, Commander Park is correct. The enemy collective is fragmenting. The temporal distortion exposure has created quantum entanglement feedback that's disrupting their unified consciousness. The revelation changed everything. For the first time in galactic history, they were seeing evidence that the seemingly invincible enemy collective could be disrupted, but exploiting this weakness would require coordination and sacrifice beyond anything they had previously attempted. Can we weaponize this effect? Demanded War Chief Bracton, his predatory instincts immediately focusing on the tactical opportunity. Theoretically, yes, Dr. Tanaka replied, her distributed consciousness running calculations across multiple quantum processors. But it would require us to detonate our temporal field generators in sequence, creating a cascade effect that would propagate the quantum disruption throughout the enemy fleet. Admiral Vasquez felt hope kindle in her enhanced mind for the first time since the invasion began. What would be the cost? Complete destruction of our defensive network, loss of all ships maintaining the field generators, and… Dr. Tanaka paused as her calculations reached their conclusion. An estimated 70% casualty rate among our enhanced personnel. The quantum feedback would be fatal to anyone with neural enhancement modifications. The command network fell silent as the implications sank in. The plan could work, could actually destroy the enemy invasion force, but it would cost the lives of almost everyone who had been enhanced to fight them. The peaceful species could survive, but their enhanced protectors would not. Captain Chen was the first to respond, her voice steady despite the death sentence she was accepting. Admiral, the enhanced personnel knew this was a possibility when we accepted our modifications. If we can save the galaxy by sacrificing ourselves, then we honor the choice our ancestors made 8,000 years ago. One by one, the enhanced commanders across the galaxy signaled their agreement. War Chief Bracton growled his approval while simultaneously coordinating attack patterns that would maximize the cascade effect. Elder Quinthera's modified consciousness sang harmonies of acceptance as she positioned her forces for their final action. Ambassador Vexhai transmitted emotional frequencies that conveyed both sorrow and determination. Dr. Tanaka, implement the Cascade Protocol, ordered Admiral Vasquez. All enhanced personnel, prepare for quantum feedback termination. Unenhanced crew, retreat to shielded positions immediately. The final battle began with a strange beauty as human and alien ships arranged themselves in perfect geometric patterns throughout the galaxy. Each vessel carried part of the temporal field generation network, their enhanced crews knowing they were about to create the largest coordinated explosion in galactic history. Cascade initiation in 30 seconds, announced Dr. Tanaka, her distributed consciousness saying goodbye to digital archives that contained the memories of her entire enhanced existence. It has been an honor serving with all of you. Admiral Vasquez closed her eyes as the countdown reached 0, feeling the quantum feedback begin to cascade through her enhanced nervous system. Around her, the command staff's enhanced bodies began to fail as the exotic energies that had made them superhuman now turned destructive. But their sacrifice worked with precision beyond their most optimistic projections. The cascade effect propagated through the enemy fleet like a disease, disrupting their collective consciousness and causing massive system failures throughout their invasion force. Ships that had seemed invincible moments before began tearing themselves apart as their unified intelligence fragmented into competing fragments. In her final moments of consciousness, Admiral Vasquez saw tactical displays showing enemy forces retreating toward the galactic rim, their collective intelligence too damaged to continue coordinated operations. The peaceful species would survive. The sanctuary worlds would endure, and the galaxy would have time to rebuild. The enhanced beings who had sacrificed their original nature to become living weapons finally found peace as their modified bodies failed. But their legacy lived on in the refugee populations they had saved, in the technologies they had shared, and in the knowledge that peaceful civilizations could become fierce protectors when necessity demanded it. Across the galaxy, unenhanced survivors emerged from their shelters to find a universe transformed. The enemy was retreating, the immediate threat was ended, and they possessed technologies that would let them rebuild their civilization stronger than before. But they also carried the memory of the enhanced beings who had sacrificed everything to preserve their future. The galaxy drew its first free breath in 8,000 years, knowing that sometimes the price of peace is the courage to become something else entirely. The Deathworlders had heeded the alien signal, had prepared for 8 millennia, and had finally taught the galaxy that survival sometimes requires the ultimate transformation, from peaceful explorers to determined guardians of life itself. In the end, the galaxy had held its breath not in fear, but in preparation for the moment when it would need to roar in defiance of extinction. And when that moment came, it found its voice in the combined strength of species that had learned to fight not for conquest, but for the right to continue existing in a universe that was far more dangerous than they had ever imagined.